Sifu Russ Smith, I'm super excited to have you here on the podcast today, Transformations, and we're going to be talking about transformations of practitioners into teachers in martial arts to promote your book that you can't see with my screen, but I'm going to put up the picture real big in front of me. And it's called Principle Driven Skill Development, was your original book, and this is the Teaching 101 program that goes along with it.
So
Uh,
great to see you, Sifu.
it's good to
Thanks
see
for
you.
having me.
Yeah. The book, it's a page turner. I read it in like 3 days because you don't want to put it down because you're building arguments. So what's happening is, for just as a prelude, is that Russ has been spent a lot of time. I've known him, 25 years, or a long time, and he has spent a lot of time studying and researching methods of teaching from all different categories of skill sets. Classroom teaching, private teaching, knowledge of the teaching method and paradigms and programs and maps of knowledge and wisdom. And that has really changed the way in which he's been presenting his traditional martial arts at the Budokan Dojo. And there are many traditional arts being taught there. So, Goju-Ryu Karate, um, Kobudo, and Five Ancestor Fist, and White Crane, and Bap Mei, and Dragon Boxing, and so all traditional styles. But the method of teaching can transcend all those styles because we're talking about a framework to hang information on. And you and I have had many, many discussions over the years about, like, the way stuff is taught in traditional martial arts. People can do a punch in the air or a kick, but what does that mean, and does it apply to anything?
Right.
Because there's so much context missing from that.
Yeah.
The context of the body, of the space, of the timing, of the how, of the when, of the why. It's not just about doing forms, for a competition or for your own fun and enjoyment, which is one thing. And you do a great job outlining the teacher needing to know the different motivations of students. So we're going to
Sure.
get to all that, but if you'd like to
Cool.
have an opening statement before we commence this
Sure, sure, sure.
our
Well, I
discussion, because
again,
I've got 5 pages of questions and notes plus
oh,
underlines with tabs on my pages. So
whoa, awesome,
so
awesome.
look out.
No, I appreciate it. Again, just so great to, we talk several times a week, but it's great to be here on your podcast because your podcast does a great job really giving people an opportunity to share how they've evolved over the years and where their initial training, whether it's in a spiritual tradition, a healing tradition, or a martial tradition, kind of takes them different places. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, you did lay out that, for me, I started as a practitioner, and then at some point I realized I wanted to become a teacher, and then everything fell apart. And that's where the real learning began, right? So,
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah. And the thing that's a little bit different with us, I mean, there are pockets of people, and because we're
mhm.
like-minded, we attract other
Yeah,
like-minded people who are
for
also,
sure.
I mean, we've spent decades outlining curriculums and rewriting curriculums for like a
Yes.
handful of students.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's
More
totally
more versions
ridiculous.
of curriculum than there are students to have it.
Right,
Yes.
right. Which is totally just ridiculous. But it just shows the passion toward finding
Yes.
a way to not only preserve a meaningful art, the art in a meaningful way.
Yeah,
Any art can be
exactly.
meaningful to anyone, but it needs to be preserved in a meaningful way. And the way of that preservation is through the method of transmission to the students.
Right.
And so um, I'm gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna dig it, and I gotta
Cool.
read
I
because I
love
got
it.
too many pages of notes.
I love it. I love it. This will be
Yeah.
great.
Um, so first, I'm just some basic general things. So just looking over the many great forwards that you have, from some really great, Marcus Davila wrote a great forward, and he said, uh, "Your work asks practitioners to look anew at the same things in different ways." Now, that's really something else, right? To get a
It's insightful.
practitioner to look at old things in new ways, it's like they had an aha moment,
Yeah.
an awakening, an enlightenment, that made
Yes.
them look at their art differently.
Yeah.
But and that's for a practitioner, but teachers, this is what we want to
Yeah.
get to. Practitioners, everybody's trying to create. There's like a little cottage industry of teachers out there trying to recreate what is the true meaning of an art.
Mm,
Oh, it's all
right.
pressure points. No, it's all
Right.
grappling.
Right.
And no, it's all
Right.
trapping, in the old
Right.
forms. And they're just
Right.
assuming what they want to assume unless the content is there to support it.
We can
Right.
impress meaning where meaning doesn't exist very
Yeah,
easily.
totally. But how
Yeah.
is a teacher, like, can a teacher see just on a basic level, re-see something, re-see the art in a way that a new venue, a new opening of presenting it can occur?
Yeah, yeah. I think that is primarily born from a teacher just having to continue to expand their own perspective. And that, for me, much of that has been cross training. Much of that has been studying academic books that teachers read when they go to college to learn to become primary school teachers or college instructors. And then part of it is looking, really trying to force any new perspective that you can through any vehicle of any lens that you can, metaphorically, so a lens that you can bring to bear. So it's, am I thinking about their progression well? Am I thinking about their attributes correctly? Am I thinking about the pressures of the training environment clearly, right? I think everything boils down to being, well, I feel like almost everything, if I distill down what I do, it's just like trying to be consistent and progressive. So if we are consistent and progressive, what does that mean? Progressive could be along many vectors, or you could say
Yeah,
attributes or dimensions, really, from a data perspective. So what are the attributes involved? Do they have them? Are they training them progressively? Are they missing them now that we're doing our objective measures? So measuring a lot, learning how to measure, learning what we need to measure, that all comes from that backwards planning process, being just crazy clear about our goals. And then working back from that helps us develop these other ways of looking at whether or not we're moving along correctly. So I just think I'm not sure if I'm hitting your question cleanly or not, but I think you've got to force yourself into many perspectives and assume you might be wrong all the time. So
hmm,
whatever you believe, just hold it lightly. Be kind of scientifically minded so that you say, well, here's kind of what I believe, but the minute I come across an environment where that doesn't work, I need to look at that and say, well, I'm missing something. I might be partially right, but now I realize I'm missing some broader truth or exception case or something of that nature.
yeah.
Did
So
that answer your question
that makes sense.
appropriately?
It does, and,
Okay.
and it'll answer more as we go through questions.
Okay. Hmm.
Randall Davis had written it in one of the forwards that what you've done is describe a process of updating the software while keeping the hardware. That's a pretty cool way of saying modernized a method
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I often internalize this is I had to figure out why in traditions, because traditional martial arts comes with the idea of conservation,
right.
and a conservative mentality basically is resistant to change.
Hmm.
And you have to figure out how to have a conservative mentality so that you can conserve the art while also having enough ability to read the room, understand the students, continue to pay attention to the daily context of modern times and what people's needs and desires are. So I think for me, it's always, the challenge is always to find the right balance that works for me and for any students I might have, figuring out what balance works in their life. Um, so I think for me, one of the biggest things was trying to figure out how to separate the payload from the transmission methodology. And once I was comfortable with that, once I had understood that was a possibility and I could figure out where I could divide the line, and then I had to give myself permission to do so.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to jockey with your teachers, your organizations to figure out where you're allowed to make changes. And sometimes other people don't agree that it's okay to teach the same idea differently. The
Right.
goal is to receive the same transmission, but you may receive it through a different methodology. I'm okay with that. But some people look at the transmission method as too deeply entwined with the tradition. So changing the methodology is not acceptable. And for me, I do believe the arts that stick too closely to that are at real risk of dying. And that's a concern I have because, of course, I feel very lucky to be a part of the transmission of the five ancestors kung fu that you teach. That art is small. I mean, that's you can count on very few hands the number of practitioners on this side of the world. Um, and from our specific family lineage, it's very, very few. So, as there's many other systems and family lines like that. And I think so many of these traditions, because we have guns and many safe places to be, these things aren't as in vogue as they once were or as necessary. So we have to figure out what their modern utility is, why any student might want to be involved in them, and try to adjust. And I think this is an overriding thing for me now, is trying to figure out how far I'm willing to stretch to meet the student,
Hmm.
how far I'm willing to change the methodology of the style to meet modern demands. Because I love traditional martial arts. There's a piece of me that's wildly conservative and wants to carry on traditions. There's a piece of me that's wildly progressive and wants to fix everything I think is wrong, even though I'm sometimes wrong. Uh, but yeah, I think that's a challenge, is figuring out how far to stretch things and change things without breaking them.
Yeah. So I guess one of the important things to do, and we've talked about this many, many times, is what is tradition and how does one define what is the tradition? So if let's just talk about Goju,
Sure.
which you're well versed in, and more people know that than five answers to fist or bakmei or,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okinawan karate. Generally, we can say when somebody says, I study traditional Goju, what does that mean?
It's a really great question. You can create a tradition in your home by eating the turkey prepared the same way twice in a row, two
Well, we
years
have
in
a
a row,
tradition with
right?
my kids growing up. Every Wednesday, I roasted a chicken. We call it
That's a
Chicken Wednesday.
There
That's our
you go.
tradition. But I
It's a
can roast
tradition,
it different spices each time. Sometimes I put tikka masala sauce on it
right?
and roast it.
Right.
Sometimes it's just,
Right.
Italian
Yeah.
spices on top.
Yeah.
But we roast a chicken. We used to roast a chicken every Wednesday when they grew up. So that's
Yeah.
a mini tradition, right? Like holidays are traditions.
Yeah.
Say Christmas is a tradition, but every family around the world who celebrates Christmas celebrates it
Exactly.
differently. There's just some things that are part
Exactly.
of it, like
Yeah.
the big fat guy with the beard and the
Right.
red clothing and the sleigh and the reindeer and the tree and the gifts.
But
Outside of
Krampus
that,
is much scarier and maybe more fun for some people, right?
right. But like in martial arts, like what we're saying we don't want to, you have to fight against your tradition, and a lot of people claim to be traditionalists, but
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
what they mean is they teach the art the way they were taught the art.
The
Eh,
way. Teach it
The
the
way,
way they were taught, which is
yeah,
really interesting because that's the transmission method, maybe not
right.
really the payload.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah, because a lot of teachers I see in traditional martial arts and have
Yeah.
seen over the decades, it's like line up for some warm-ups and then
Yeah.
do some up and down, doing techniques up and down the floor, then do your kata and then some bunkai. And then
Yeah.
if they do free sparring, little free
Yeah.
sparring at the end.
Yeah.
And there's no deep dive into anything. There's
Right.
no extra skills development. There's no
Right.
discussion of principles or
Yeah.
explanation of principles. It's
Yeah.
basically, I'm going to give you these six techniques in two kata to get from white to yellow,
Hmm.
these eight techniques in two kata to get
Yeah.
from yellow to green
Yeah.
belt,
Yeah.
right? Because I guess the tradition is you get a black belt by knowing
Yeah.
all the box of material under it
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
very basic way.
Yeah. And that's the
There's
thing. I
not much
think
knowledge there.
there really is not. And I
Right.
think in those traditions, I'll use my quotey fingers on those traditions. They are traditions. In those traditions, I think the goal is self-refinement, right?
Yeah.
It is a social, the goal is more social, physical practice, maintenance of your body. And the original concept, which I'm sure there are people that will argue with me. I will argue very strongly that this is the case. If we're talking about a martial tradition, I don't care which one, whatever state of being alive and used in competitive or on the battlefields or whatever, the core concept of a martial tradition is to deal with violence in some way.
Right.
It can, however, be many things to many people outside of that. But originally, at its very core, if we're going to call these things fighting traditions, then the the core concept is to deal with violence. And
Hmm.
so a lot of traditions have strayed away from that because violence isn't a daily problem for them. And I just don't like the idea of losing the core concept. And I think that has been lost in so many traditions. And here's the thing, I fully understand that even if let's say I teach the hardcorest fighters in the world, I'm still going to have some people that come to me and might want to train for other reasons. And I have to decide for my school, for my time, for my reputation, for them, I have to decide whether I'm willing to take the hardcore fighters and the grandmas and everybody in between. It's my decision as a school owner, um, and my decision as to where to place my time and effort in passing along the tradition.
Right.
Can we? Something Sensei Davila and I often quote you on is this idea that you can level down, but you can't level up.
Yeah.
So you can learn very great skills and you can back off and be less than lethal, but you can't go the other direction. You
Right.
can't go very soft and less than lethal and then immediately level up if you haven't trained that. So
Impossible.
that paradigm has been super helpful for us and our thinking. And I totally agree with that. I think it's a part of how you can take this individual preferences or changes in traditions or focus of traditions and make more sense of them.
Yeah.
Many things, this kind of like the blind men feeling the elephant, right? What is the martial art to
Right.
different people? And it can be different things to different people if the teacher allows it, if the teacher supports it. So a big part of that is on the teacher's plate, I think.
Yeah. And I think another thing is you always talk about people making assumptions about things,
Yeah.
you know. So a student will sign up for a martial art class under the assumption that that
Yes.
martial art teacher or class or school does
Yes.
what they want or expect it to
Yes.
do.
Right.
And practitioners always make the assumption that, hey, I'm a fourth dan, I can teach, or I'm a fifth dan, I'm a master, I can go teach. And the skill sets don't really line up at all. One
They're
thing has nothing to do
non-overlapping
with the other.
magisteria, right? They're just
But if
not.
but if all you're
Yeah.
passing down is the tradition, the traditional way of teaching is line up and do punches up and down the floor, and then
Right.
some kata self-defense technique, one step sparring, and some point sparring.
Yeah.
Anybody can do that, but then we've
Yeah.
got generations of martial artists who don't know anything and can't do anything.
Exactly. And we use terms very different. We all use terminology differently and terminology evolves over time. But
Right.
I generally call that kind of person a coach or an assistant
Yeah.
instructor because they're not really at the level of like curriculum development and curriculum
Right.
customization. They're really at the level of deliver a lesson plan to an average group. And you may not even be able to hit all the edges on that group because there are going to be some individuals that the lesson plan didn't speak to. So
Yeah.
I think those teachers are limited. And of course, it's true that we learn by teaching. I learn from my students constantly and learn through the process of preparing lessons and practicing myself to be ready to teach certain material. But I just think it's a horrible thing to unleash an unpracticed teacher on a student who is expecting a real teacher. And this was where like for me in the early days of training, it really hurt me mentally to understand that I was coming to a school and the teacher was like, "Well, you learned a kata, you learned the basics, figure out how to fight." It's like, no, I'm paying you money to teach me. Don't tell me to practice this solo dance and then I'm gonna figure out how to fight. Like that just there's nothing about that that makes sense from a Western mind. It only makes sense in a revealed learning concept where the teacher's elevated and barely helps, maybe nudges you once in a while, but like that might be a 30-year process, not a
Oh,
5-year
it's
process,
definitely a 30-year process.
right? It could be a
Right.
50 or a never, you never get it, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's not repeatable. And I do think good teaching is repeatable, right? I think I put a whole list of like quality metrics that I think teaching should hit on, but repeatability is one of the main ones. I want, even if I'm only going to teach this thing to 5 people, I kind of do want to have some consistency in giving those 5 people a similar experience. It won't be identical, but it should not be reinventing the wheel 5 times.
Right.
For
So
me,
I,
maybe that's just a preference.
yeah, but it's true too. But we have a, I, one thing I noticed in reading your book, Teaching 101, is that it's hard to parse out some of the stuff. For example, we say, okay, we need to know the motivations of the students coming in.
Mhm.
All right. And you also want the teaching to be able to speak to those motivations of the students when where applicable, you
Where
know.
applicable, where we've decided the school is going to support that. In some cases, we're going to, the goal is to, as early as possible. I learned this in business and sales. They said there's two winners in every engagement. It's the person who wins the sale and the first person who gets out of the negotiation and doesn't waste their time.
Right.
So I think of it that way. It's like, don't waste the teacher's time, the student's time,
Right.
all that. Weed those students
So
out.
some if somebody wants martial sport ring training at your school, it's not something that
It may
you're
not be.
teaching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Because I was thinking like how if you've got 10 students on the floor and you're teaching their class, you can't be modifying the teaching method in class to speak to each one of their needs and desires and hopes.
Right.
Right? There
But
has to
what,
be a baseline of this is what we
mhm,
do for everyone. And then I can up or down
mhm.
within some kind of a frequency wave
Yeah.
uh, for slower learners, faster learners, you know.
Well, that's the thing. When we create the training plan, we're aiming at a scarecrow, right?
Right,
There's some mythical average student we have in our mind, and we aim our training plan and our lesson plan at that student. And if those aren't the students that show up, then the teacher better be good enough to adjust on the fly. And I do think, again, I'm saying I think this is a challenge. The same way I think it's hard to define a tradition. There's no one definition of tradition. I also think there's no right answer,
right,
one right answer for how strict or how loose should you be with your interpretation of the goals and value of the tradition. If you have a student who's completely social, talks during class inappropriately, doesn't do their homework, is slowing down the whole class, might be time to exit that student. Let them know they're not like social's good, but only after class or before class, during class. This isn't a social activity, right? Or the people who want to go real hard, I always know who those people are. Those are the guys that get paired together. They're over here. Sometimes I even let them go while I'm being really careful with the other people in the room. It's not wildly, like we've talked about, it's very difficult sometimes when you have, it's why I can't teach multiple styles in a class, which I know we've
right,
talked about before. I have to teach one style, but at least I can teach that style in many gradients and from many perspectives. But um you have to be well versed enough in your style to be able to do that. And
right,
and so I think that's why it's important to break everything down so you can build it up. Uh Not spend your time breaking things down. Uh Let me say it this way. As a teacher, I think you should break down all the concepts to first principles and component parts well before you expose students to them, because you should be able to construct like a Lego set. You've got all the parts. This student needs this version, that student needs that version, that student needs that version. That's a huge part of moving beyond that first level of teaching, the pedagogy, teaching children, which is super explicit and you're assuming they know nothing, to the andragogy where you're teaching adults and what you're trying to do is figure out what they know and understand so you can find the little hidden hooks they have that you're going to start latching things on. I think kind of like a Christmas tree.
mm,
There's places in there where I'm trying to hook these bulbs, and it takes effort, right?
right,
And then eventually getting to the point where you're doing everything with the Socratic method, like you're trying to gently guide the student to have their own epiphanies, but that takes a long time. You can only do that in very, very small, really a one-on-one style activity.
right.
So there's different teaching mentalities, different teaching methods for different stages of learning, as well as for different kinds of learners. And it's a big matrix to try to figure out. And I'm still on my way to learning it all, or trying.
Oh, of course. We all are. It's quite
Yeah.
difficult and it's unbelievable I mean, it's hard to fathom that for the amount of decades we've been trying to figure it out, and there's
Yeah.
other people around the
Yeah.
world in the
Yeah.
different countries trying
Yeah.
to figure it out.
Yeah.
And every time I get together with high-ranking black belts, they're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
The ones who care about tradition and
Yeah.
teaching and keeping the art going.
Yeah.
And yet, after all this time, there's not like
Yeah.
a model,
Yeah.
until now.
You think about how we sometimes talk about being parents, right? We want to
Yeah,
become the parent we wish we had.
yeah,
So that becomes a goal, right? And I think that's my goal as a teacher. Like the first book, the principle driven skill development book, this was like the how to fight stuff that I thought I was going to be taught right away.
right,
And I wasn't, and I was frustrated, right? So I'm like, now I got to go do this. I got to go teach myself. Now I'm self-teaching. And then through cross training and a lot of research and those things, and then becoming a teacher. Chemo Sensei was like, "You've been training how long? Just go teach. Just teach. You've been doing it. Create your your school. Put out a shingle. Do it. You learn by teaching." It was great, horrible advice, right? It was wonderfully empowering. It was horrible for me to unleash myself on my first student, my son. I was a horrible teacher because I just taught him the way I was taught, and I was
but
insanely
I think
dedicated
that's
to,
all that Chemo Sensi was expecting of you,
yeah,
because
yeah,
he
but
taught you the way he was taught.
yeah, but I
Yeah,
wish I had known the other advice that I've gotten since then. Like Josh has said, if you had done this the Chinese way, you'd hand him off to a brother. I would have handed my son to
right.
you and had you teach him. That way
And I
it
would have
wasn't
said, no
me.
mas, no mas. Right,
But the same way I expected teachers to teach me explicitly, not implicitly or to tell me to figure it out myself.
right,
I think when a student comes to me, they expect me to be a teacher, not just a practitioner who runs them through drills. And so
right.
I'm trying to be the teacher I wish I had. I've had great, as you know, you've been one of my incredible not only friends but teachers and mentors in this space as well as in the practical space as a practitioner. Um, but there's a lot to it. There's how to create structure, how to create drills, how to be clear about timing, and all these things. And since there's so much, you've given me big chunks of this. But it's taken me a long time to come up with enough that I felt like I had a stable mental framework to be able to put it to paper.
Right,
Um,
right,
and as you know, I am a product of the software development industry. And I constantly fight the idea of trying to get everything perfect before I put it out. So as you know, I will put out things that there'll be spelling errors and I will change things later and I'll put out a second edition or those kinds of things to advance things. The first book, the one glaring hole I realize now is I didn't talk about deception at all. And as Sun Tzu says, all war is deception. So big gap there. I'll rectify that at some point. But teaching 101, I really hope it at least gets my initial thoughts down, some structure that will help the students. I mean, the main reason I spent the effort to try to put this in final book form, first edition, was because I have some students who are well versed in other styles who have been cross training with me for a few years, getting close to getting some practitioner level certifications. And then right after that, some of them are interested in learning to become teachers. So I
right.
want to be very clear about separating practitioner gradings from teacher gradings as we've
Hmm.
discussed offline.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm a believer that, you know, when you become first dan, second dan, third dan, and practitioner ranks, there needs to
Yeah.
be a dan ranking system for teacher ranks as well.
I
That
completely
you're
agree.
you're a first dan entry level teacher, or you're a sixth dan master teacher,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
we have to go to school. We would have
Yeah.
to go to school to get a teaching certification and to teach in elementary school, maybe middle school, and then I think you have to get a master's or doctorate to teach higher than that in
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
4 years of school or 3 extra years, and
Yep.
doing programs and papers and studies and all
It
kinds
is.
of stuff. It's not just,
Yeah.
you graduate with something. But this brings me around to something I wanted to talk about, which was that I found very interesting when I was decades ago reading the books of Don Draeger,
Hmm.
and he separated out uh, the Jutsu and the Do. So he had a set of 3 books. He had many books that we love, but he had a set of 3 books on Japanese martial traditions, uh, modern Budo, modern Bujitsu, no, classical Budo,
Classical.
classical Bujitsu, and modern
Yeah.
Budo Bujitsu.
Yeah.
And he said basically that all of the arts that were Jutsu were battlefield arts
Yeah.
have in Japan today, meaning since World War II maybe,
Yeah.
become martial ways, Do, martial
Yeah.
ways. So
I call that
jujitsu
the
is
peacetime effect,
the
right? This is
peacetime
the,
effect. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and he also had mentioned, I don't know if it was there or in his old Hoplology newsletter that the Hoplologist Society has, where they talked about a lot of the traditional martial arts, I think village martial arts in China and the Philippines, were basically civilian defense systems that civilians would use for self-defense. They weren't developed for combat, for the
Right.
battlefield,
Right.
for guns and bayonets and
Right.
swords and horseback and spear,
Right.
you know. But we
Yeah.
seem to all call it, combat arts and fighting arts because we're over
Yep.
dramatic in the West and we want everything to be
Sure.
deadly in
Sure.
combat.
Sure. Sure.
But there's no way you're using Goju out against samurai and you're not using five ancestor fist against General Chi Ji Guang with their swords,
Right. Yeah.
and nobody's
Yeah.
going out just fighting people empty hand to empty hand arm banging.
Yeah.
Uh,
Super important. Yeah. To
so
understand that.
knowing what's not originally meant to be battlefield art means maybe it didn't lose its utility. It's just a different utility. It was for self-defense skills. Like I would say MMA is a very complete martial combat sport. And most traditional martial arts does not fare well in that realm, mainly because the conditioning and the training method is not there. The
Sure.
conditioning to take
Yep.
shots, give shots, have your wind and
Yep.
your stamina, and have practiced in that situation. So they're different things altogether, but it doesn't mean that the traditional art is not good if somebody tries to mug you or rob you or fight you in a bar that you couldn't defend yourself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think it leads back to like the goal. I guess the goal has to be for the teacher of their school is what is it that you want to pass along?
Yeah. What is your focus, right? Like,
Is it street self-defense, fighting against gangs, fighting other skilled martial artists? Is it sport, or are you training military personnel and black ops?
Right.
I mean, they're all different.
They are all different. There is one commonality, and we're talking about violence. Whether
Right.
violence is in the ring or on the battlefield or on the street, it's all violence, right? So we're trying to stay safe. As we define self-defense, it works for a lot of situations where you're not the aggressor, right? But it doesn't work. Self-defense doesn't matter as a definition when you're talking about a combat sport. But you've still got to make sure that you don't get taken out while you're trying to control the other person, right? So as some people say, control him without letting him control me, or defend myself and then counter control him. You say it either way. You're talking about one before the other, but it's still two parts, right? You're trying to stay safe. You're trying to control. There are a lot of methods of
Yep.
control. But to your point, this is why I think it was super important to talk in the book on Teaching 101 before curriculum development to talk about cataloging a system
Right.
and all the elements of all these different fighting traditions, some of which are optional because they don't make sense for any given style for the reasons you just mentioned. They may not be battlefield, there's no weapons, no weapon maintenance. We don't have any healing traditions because maybe that just wasn't part of the art or whatever. But to properly catalog a system, it's a very hoplogical kind of thing to do. But I do feel like it's maybe one of the missing elements of building curriculum in the modern times is being super clear and crisp about what the art is and is not. Because like I've seen in the karate world, some attempt to just throw everything in the kitchen sink in the style because
Right.
there's no guiding principles that were written down for so many of these karate styles, or very few. Much of it was oral traditions, so every tradition is fragmented. There's very little cohesion in the mental framework, the strategy and tactics of the style. um I think it's just super, super important to catalog the styles, not only its history, but its mindset, the originating background and cultural context of the style, how it's evolved into modern days. What are its strategies? What are its tactics? What are its teaching and training theory? Um, and then go into, well, if it has stuff that talks about developing the body, right? You were talking about MMA. Those guys are really a lot of training. Some of it's sports specific, some of it's generalized, some of it's combat technique specific for developing power, things like that. Know all those training methods. So you go, oh, the art says, oh, it's a punching art, and it says practice a lot of grip work. Why is that? Well, because you want to close your hand hard to deliver a heavy punch, right? Why does it do a lot of wrist strength training? Well, because you need your wrist stable when you punch somebody in the head, right?
Right.
So just being super clear about everything that the art says is important so that you keep yourself a bit on the rails. Because even though I've done a lot of cross training, what kind of frustrates me sometimes is when I see people just like randomly grabbing cool shit from
Yeah.
Krav Maga and Silat and this and that and being like, that's in the art. It's like, it's okay, it's not in the art. It can be in your teaching. You can
Right.
teach it, but can you please just like be clear that this is not originally a part of the art? It doesn't
Right.
really, it actually violates some of the style's rules,
Right.
right? We talk about this a lot. You can see a lot of eskrima methods that people might bring into our eskrima that are fun, but they might violate some of our principles. So basically, it's draining their attention away from the training that we want them to
Right.
practice to other things. And, in class, we run the plan. Out of class, people can do whatever they want. But if
Yeah.
they're taking a long time, it might be because they're doing stuff that's countering what we're hoping them to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about. Um, See, we're still early in the book here. We've been going at just about almost an hour, and we're still on like
That's
page
crazy.
7.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah.
There's so much in this book. It's
So
amazing.
much.
So we're gonna have to do multiple
Cool.
parts
Okay.
to get through it. Yep, that'll be great. One thing it said, I'm this now. I have
Hmm.
to read some things because
Sure.
I'd like to have some discussion.
Yeah.
Um, on one of the, boy, I'm getting old. Can't read. Could you put this in 15-point font next time? No. The
Look at me pull out my readers.
Yeah, the exact content of many historical traditions was also frequently obscured. Knowledge was hidden as
Oh.
trade secrets,
Mm,
shaped by many marketing tactics. Yep,
hmm
left uncodified.
hmm
Kept oral due to cultural aversion to innovation or lack of ability or willingness to record teachings. We see that a lot.
Yep.
These factors contributed to a lack of repeatability, which is what you talked about a little bit
Right.
ago, leading to a drift in later generations' understanding and application of the tradition.
Yeah,
That's a huge thing.
it is.
That's
It
such a
is.
big problem.
It's cultural drift due to many factors of the human condition,
So many
right?
factors,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and then you talk about, I'm jumping down a little bit.
Sure.
So, oh, okay. So this echoes what you were saying about when you started teaching your son and you didn't know how to
Hmm.
teach, and
Right.
you wanted someone to show you all the goods, but you were just
Yeah.
getting showed the scaffolding, but you
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
showing all the pieces, but not how to build the house.
That basically, yeah. Yeah.
But I think of a lot of martial arts that weren't made for the military, you
Hmm.
know, and I think a lot of the martial arts that we do were not meant for military use. I mean,
Right.
you know,
I
um,
agree.
but self-defense for civilians or
Hmm.
families, which is why a lot wasn't written down and codified and published. It was just
Yeah.
handed down. But I think of like the journeyman, when
Hmm.
you're learning trades, like
Hmm.
plumbing and electric,
Hmm.
an electrician,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
woodworker, carpentry. You're being taught one-on-one as you go.
Hmm.
It's a tradition of,
Yeah.
you have your apprentice or maybe two or three apprentices, and they
Yep.
learn, then they become a journeyman, then they learn
Yep.
longer, become a tradesman
Yep.
and things like that. And the teaching method of every single guy is going to be different because of their
Yeah.
personality and the
Yeah.
projects that they're working on.
Yeah.
Like if you're working for me to learn plumbing and you're my apprentice,
Hmm.
and I learned from my father working on houses in the neighborhood, but now I got a contract to
Yeah.
do an office building.
Yeah.
It's a whole new way of
For sure.
teaching you because the
For
whole
sure.
process is different.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that method of one-on-one tradesman style learning is good
Mm.
when it's one-on-one, you know.
It's excellent. It's maybe the best method, except it's good for that student
Oh, yeah,
And that
right,
student alone, it's
right,
not necessarily good for the tradition. So, and
right,
here's why, right?
right.
Like you have an elephant, it takes 18 months to gestate a baby. I'm just
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. I'm just trying to pull from memory. But, you know, these animals that take a long time to reproduce, these can become extinct very quickly because they don't have the ability to reproduce. A rat has the opposite problem, right? Rats are, you give them one crumb of cheese
right,
and they just had 50 babies. Um, so this is my concern as I balance these ideas is 100%. I think you're right. I think when I have the opportunities to train with you solo, the amount of knowledge I get in a short time is unbelievable. It's like a fire hose. Sensei Davila is just the most incredible opportunity possible. The problem is if I have a heart attack tomorrow, if I get hit
right.
by a bus,
Oh, the tradition dies. Yeah,
a piece of the tradition dies. The chance of it surviving drops dramatically.
right,
You have other students, but the chances drop. And this is what's bad for traditions in the long run. So I think we have to think, Sensei Davila talked about this kind of a couple generations back and a couple generations forward. I think not only due to knowledge drift, but also teaching taking too long, we have to work on doing what you've been the greatest model for me on this. Write the damn books that our teachers didn't write,
right.
right? Come up with the training plans and teach that next generation so they can teach, but do it efficiently and effect. You help me think through the difference between efficiency and effectiveness, right? They are two
And
different things.
safety. Mm-hmm.
Safety, there's all these factors, and it's just there are wonderful one-on-one teaching methods and nothing wrong with them at all, except they don't really help us guarantee these arts survive into the future. And I think
Right.
we've got to do a better job of that. And
Yeah.
not only survive, but survive with fidelity,
Right.
with accuracy and effectiveness and less drift than has happened in
Mm-hmm.
times where we didn't have the documentation techniques we have today. Because
Right.
it's so easy to document things now,
Yeah.
relatively. I mean, it's still insanely frigging hard to put pen to paper, but
Oh, it's super hard to write. And to write
but
with
we can video.
clarity, it's
Yeah,
super hard. And to write with a progression, like you're building an argument and
a
expanding it
story.
toward the end of the book
Yeah,
to hit points, and people are jumping around, not in order, and you
yeah,
can't control that at all.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
real
very
hard.
difficult. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But it's the best we can do. We can't read it for them, but at least we did our part and we documented the things and
yeah.
we gave the art a fighting chance. And I know you have an incredible opus about to come out, so I'm super excited about your book. You like the art needs that.
Right.
And so I and my students and your other students really appreciate it. So we're
Yeah.
excited for that.
But it's got nothing to do with teaching. It just has all the secret sauce, but no teaching method. So now they got to read your book to learn how to put that secret sauce into a recipe, you know?
Well, that is, but you gave the catalog.
I gave the
You
catalog.
gave
Yeah.
the catalog, and that's the first half. And
Yeah.
then knowing that there can be many ways to teach, telling people exactly how to teach isn't necessarily the way to go either. So
Right.
figuring out the balance, I think, is the way. But yeah,
So
I'm excited.
if thank you. If I think about my training as a kid,
Yeah.
I started in Taekwondo.
Hmm.
Okay. And I remember the teacher, it was a Korean master, but there was a an American, black belts under him, of course. And one I got close with, and he used to always tell me, Master Kwok teaches the traditional way, the way his teacher taught him, and the way his
Hmm.
teacher's teacher
Yeah,
taught
yeah,
his
yeah.
teacher, and you're getting a real traditional way of doing it. I'm like, oh
Right.
man, that's so awesome. Because so many martial artists since then till now, we're talking, 40 plus years, 46 years. Um, they talk about trying to go back to the original form, the original kata, the original
Yes,
teachings.
I get it.
Who said the original were the best? Chocolate chip cookies taste better today than in 1920 and in 1800s. No, I'm telling you, man, we got better
I believe it.
chocolate, right?
Yeah,
I
no,
watch some of
it's a
these
great
cooking
point.
shows and they're
It's a
showing
great
like
point.
coffee from the 1800s and it's disgusting. I don't want it, you know. And you're talking about just sanitation or cooking
Yeah.
methods and
Or the
all
the percent of cacao in the chocolate or whatever.
right, the way they
Right.
process it,
Yeah.
um, you know,
You bring
and
up a great
sugar.
you bring up a great point, because that search for the original doesn't necessarily meaning you're searching for the best. And I have
Right.
suffered, say suffer. I have I have ran a lot of cycles in my life
Looking for the original.
looking for the Holy Grail, right? And I'm so much happier now because I think I've stopped the mythological thinking, and I've used
Yeah.
my actual brain to try to think these things through,
Hmm.
and get great mentors like yourself and others who have helped me demystify my thinking. And I agree. I think if you at least understand what the if you can be told or explained what the goal is, there should be many paths up the mountain, but only one summit, right?
Right.
As the saying goes. So the way of getting there to me matters so much less, unless that's part of what you care about in the tradition. And
Totally.
you might
Right.
not, but I
Right.
think I think it needs to be discussed as optional, that we used to do. Like I was talking in class the other night, like, people used to go throw walnuts on the ground, and you'd tap the
Break
walnuts,
them with
right?
the pole.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But is that the best way? You could probably come up with other ways. So it just because it's the old way doesn't mean it's the best. And I think
Right.
it's a super important point you brought up.
Yeah, because I think like we tend to Westerners. I don't know if
Yeah.
the Asians do
Yeah.
it. Well, China certainly does it, but Westerners, we tend to deify the
Yeah.
old teachers of
Yeah.
Asian martial arts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Yang Cheng Fu had to be the best ever. A fly couldn't
Right.
take off of
Right.
his hand and all this.
Right.
And the guy could have stunk. We have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
You know, we have no idea,
Yeah.
right? Chua Gyuk Bang, our great grandmaster of five ancestor fist, beat all these guys, but were they really knockdown, drag out fights, or was it like let's touch arms and I'll push you over, you push me? Like we don't know
Yeah.
the details of that, but we want to deify everyone. You know, look
Right.
at the Ip Man movies. Every one
It's
of them
true.
is historical fiction. You know, none of
Right.
that happened,
Right.
but they're cool movies.
Yeah.
So we always wanted to believe like the guys, you know, early qigong guys were sending people flying away, and the Taoist magicians and the martial art guys who can kill you with one punch and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And a lot
Yeah.
of that is made up. A lot of it is, Don Draeger and Robert Smith, who had co-written a book together called Asian Fighting Arts way back. Um, Robert Smith had a whole line of Chinese martial art books
Hmm.
and judo books. One thing was interesting, just as a side note, Robert Smith, I have a copy of a hardcover book called The Bibliography of Judo, and it was like 300 pages of all judo articles and books and magazine
Cool.
things and like that, you know, back until I think it came out in the early 70s. It's like,
Yeah.
were there that many people interested in the bibliography of judo that they would
It's
print
wild.
thousands of
Yeah.
copies, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, he and Don Draeger wrote a book, this book together, and they got together and became, I think, with another person, maybe Quentin Chambers, to become this fictitious author called John F. Gilby.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
had Secret Fighting Arts of the World and another
To
one.
try to not piss people off when he wrote certain things, right?
Well, yeah, but they took all the fantasy stuff that they heard and wrote it as if it was truth, you know,
Oh boy.
but it was all supposed to be satire, but
Yeah.
everybody took it as real, you know,
Gotcha.
and it's like, you know, funny stuff, just real funny
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I love those two books. I think it was
Yeah.
Western Boxing and World Wrestling was the second
Yeah.
one in the Gilby
Yeah.
franchise. Secret Fighting Arts of the World was awesome,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, because I grew up watching Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movies and David Carradine's Kung Fu
Yeah.
show and wanting to be able to fly through windows and do
Yeah.
magic
Yeah.
on people and beat up. Being a black belt, I thought, you know, when I'm 16, I'll be a black belt and I'll be able to beat, you know, the biker gang leader because I know the
Right.
techniques. You
Right.
know,
Pull a Billy Jack on him or something,
well,
right?
I'd have to take off my shoes first if I'm Billy Jack before I kick you. Don't
Right.
want to scuff them up. But it gets back to why do we have to believe that the masters of past who created these systems were geniuses?
Yeah. Yeah.
They couldn't have all
Yeah.
have been geniuses, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
second, so what's wrong with evolving the arts? Meaning,
Yeah.
if you evolve the teaching platform, you're necessarily evolving the way the artist practiced and learned. And isn't that what you want? Automobiles have gone from the Model T to the Bugatti, and it's like amazing. And sports
Yeah.
science, athletes today Look at the players of the NBA because of sports science and sports training and
Yeah.
psychology and nutrition.
Oh
They're
yeah.
so much better athletes than Dr. J, who was amazing
Right.
back in the day,
Yeah.
but he wasn't even close,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
You know, I think martial artists today, a lot of the top martial artists today are way better than probably the masters that
Oh,
we
for sure.
deify
For sure.
because
There are
of our
times when I see
understanding of,
things. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
There are times when I see videos of some of the old masters and I'm like, oh,
Mm.
that was disappointing.
Yes.
Like, I wish I saw them in their prime because that was not
Maybe that was
impressive.
the prime. Right. That's the scary part.
Yeah. But you bring
Yeah.
up a great point, right? Because a lot of us came into to traditional martial arts because we wanted some self-defense. We were
Right.
young and small and weak or sickly or whatever the story is, but a lot of us have a very similar version of that in some way. And we hope that there's some remember when they used to call them tricks, jujitsu
Yes.
tricks?
I have a jujitsu book from Kiyoshi
Right.
Nakai, and he
Yeah.
says, "Here's another trick," and he kicks the
Right,
guy's
right,
shin and then
right,
pulls the
right.
wrist out. And it's like
It's good
that's so
stuff.
cool.
Yeah. And so you hope that there are these secrets and these tricks that
Right.
make this difference. The small, skinny kid who gets the sand kicked in his face in the old comic book advertisements, right? And that's what we always hoped was going to be passed down in these traditions. And we hoped that there was going to be that revealed knowledge in the process so that we didn't have to go learn the hard way. Because you either
Right.
learn from somebody else or you learn the hard way. And when it comes to violence, you might fucking die because you're trying
Right.
to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
So it's just maybe the worst avenue or the worst area of study to try to learn the hard way. So I do think that's one of the things is, or at least for me, I feel like at some place along the way, I made a new decision about my place in the tradition.
Yeah.
I was not somebody who had to revere that in that way you're talking about. I was a living link. And if I wasn't allowed to make some adjustments, I felt I might be the last link in some of those cases. So I think that's important. I think you got to figure out your place in the tradition, your role in the tradition, and not think that it's this like passed down from God, unchangeable kind of
Right.
thing, because that's how things die. They just die out. They can't adapt. There has to be some adaptability for modern audiences. And
Right.
I think that's what many of us writers and teachers do is we just take old knowledge and put new labels on them and help people understand them using different terminology, right?
Yeah. When it cracks me up when people say like, "Oh, that style's no good. The guy just made up the kata." Well, didn't your grandmaster just make up his
Somebody did.
kata? I mean, somebody
Totally.
made it up, right? And
Totally.
it doesn't mean that they're any more genius than the guys today. When we have
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much content, look at your bookshelf there, which is looking a little
Yeah.
meager. No,
Well,
just
compared to
kidding.
yours.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it's awesome. But
Yeah.
look at all the content you have
Yeah.
to reference
That our
for
teachers never
that
had.
that never had. They
Yeah.
maybe had the manuscript of their dojo,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we have all this information,
Yeah.
all a whole wall of books and magazines, not
Yeah.
including the internet, for goodness sake.
And
I
and uh
mean, my
and an
God,
archive and all kinds of
an
stuff.
archive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just yeah, it feels weird to imagine any this is one of the things I try to do with traditional martial arts is I try to go, would I do this if what would this look like if I was going down the street and I asked somebody to build to I've wrote a post about this is just to be silly. It's like I go to a local shipbuilder and I'm like, teach me how to build ships. And he's like, you've come to the right place. I'm a teacher of shipbuilding. And he goes, here, grab this chisel. And I'm like, awesome. He says, move like this. And I'm like, awesome, great. And I say, okay, well, when can I have some wood? He's like, not yet. Another 4 or 5 years, I'll give you a piece of
right,
wood. 4 or 5 years goes by. I'm crazy. I stick with it. 4 or 5 years goes by. I'm like, you're gonna teach me how to build this ship now? You gave me the wood. I'm working on it. It's great. He's like, now you go teach yourself how to build the ship.
right. That's a very Zen thing. It's a very like
It's like
koan,
you just take something out of its contextual cultural context
right,
and look at it from your Western perspective and go, this just doesn't make sense.
right,
Like I just can't imagine that. And if you went there and you said, "Hey, I want to learn peace and harmony through pretending to build ships, and he's like, I got you, man, I'm your man, then you signed up for, you're getting what you signed up for,
Right.
right? But that's not what people normally sign up for. They think they're
Right.
coming in for something else.
Yeah. So, one thing, when people ask me sometimes on podcasts, they'll say, like, all the eskrima that you do or whatever, what's the most important thing if you had to teach somebody something because they have to fight? They know they're going to get a premonition
Mhm.
and they're going to get attacked tomorrow, or they know
Mhm.
they've got to fight
Yeah,
tomorrow with this
yeah,
guy. What
yeah,
would you teach them? And I say, if all they need to do is fight, I got one footwork and one strike, and I would drill it, and they would master it in time and distance and range,
yes,
and that's it. And strength and body mechanic, and we could do it in a few hours. And
yeah,
then if they had more than a day, they could master it,
yeah,
with some drilling. But that's all they need.
yeah.
Like, if all you want to do is be able to survive an attack, self-defense, you really need one strike. And pick. We have 12, right?
Mhm.
Pick any of them.
Yeah,
Any of them can win, and pick a footwork to go with it. If you understand how to control range and gait and the timing, you can win, right?
love it. Yeah,
And maybe you win. I would think, based on my experience, 70% of the time. Maybe some things you can't account for on the
yeah,
opponent. Maybe you're not used to somebody take 3 steps before they swing, or
for
say,
sure.
look
Yeah,
over there, and then they hit you.
yeah, yeah,
Fake left, go
yeah,
right. But if I gave them all 12 angles and we ran techniques off all 12 angles, they would probably be less ready to fight in a short amount of time,
yeah.
but better equipped over the long haul, maybe.
Yeah, some of us were talking in class and online recently about Hick's law, the idea that if you have too many options, it's
Yeah.
just bad, right? I
Like a
just remember
diner.
always, yeah, yeah. I remember playing racquetball, and if I or somebody else would hit the ball and it would be coming right down my center line, there was a portion of my brain that was like, okay, where's the other guy at? Where do I want to be? How do I want to hit it? And while I was thinking
Like
about
the
that, the ball
balls.
hit me,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So it just, and of course, the way fights go, you don't have moments of clarity, but every few snips during that engagement when your adrenaline's pumping like that. So yeah, there can't be too many options. You can't have that much. And your method for teaching, I mean, as a master level teacher, I really appreciate that you reworked your curriculum to teach the most combatively appropriate things first, like the
Yeah.
best case scenarios first, and then teach us the degrading level of kind of oh shit scenarios from there. I just thought that was a wonderful thing that I don't know that I've ever seen this elsewhere, where you take the best, most effective things and put them first. They are the most difficult to train, so it's going to
They
take you a
are.
long time. So you could either do this one way, which is the way people often do it, is they're like, it's going to take a long time, so I'm going to build it up really, really slowly. And you're like, look, it's footwork, it's learning your sense of range and timing, and then uh, doing the right thing, either a mode one or a mode two in the best timing. Um, and you put that first, and learning it first means they have more time to practice it,
Right.
and then they can get better at it. And it's
And never
just,
training anything wrong. Like, I'll never train anything that violates the principles. And I don't like it when teachers
yeah,
talk about principles and then they show techniques, 1,000 techniques and variations of a technique, and 80% violate the principles, because it's almost like the principles is the thought, and the techniques, look how good I am and look how
right.
much I know. So
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
impress you all the time,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but they're
That's a,
breaking the principles. And most styles don't even teach principles.
right,
They're
right.
teaching techniques, meaning a
Yes.
single technique, a front
Yeah.
kick, a side kick, a
A
block,
trick, a
and
trick.
then a one-step sparring,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
never works out.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, your teaching method was really instrumental in me moving forward in my own thoughts. I did talk about this in the book about don't teach planning to unteach, right? Like
right,
don't don't teach the 4 count hubad if your goal is to deflect and hit in one beat,
right,
or teach the 4 count hubad, but get rid of it right away, because what you don't want to do is do more reps of that than the technique that's going to be helpful to save
right,
your life, right?
right.
So while hubad lubad could be a part of your curriculum if you use it correctly and carefully and only in the right time frame, if you hold on to drills that are 4 count response to a single beat attack, and you do too much of that, you're teaching something you may not realize you're teaching.
A
Um,
student of mine and a colleague, his name is Bob Clark. He's the U.S. Team coach for Sambo, Russian
Sample.
Sambo.
Yeah.
So he's right
Yeah.
now over at in the stands, the
Nice.
Kazakhstan and
Oh yeah.
Uzbekistan, all the stands
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
World Championships. He flies once or twice a year or 3 times a year over. He's a really cool
Cool.
guy.
Yeah.
But he dropped a term on me the other day in class. I was teaching something, and he said, "Yeah, we call those training scars in my
Oh
Sambo."
yeah. 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 Yeah.
I was like, "That's so cool." I
Yeah.
hadn't been
Yeah.
familiar with that term.
Yeah.
He's like, when you do something in training that just leaves scars on you because
Yeah.
you don't correct it in the moment,
Right.
and it stays with you, you know?
And you're maybe unintentionally reinforcing it all the time because you weren't
Right,
being careful about how you're constructing the drills or how much exposure
right.
they were having to each drill, letting them to hold on to drills that they don't need anymore
That they
because you've
don't
got
need.
better ones that they're ready
Right,
for. A training scar in karate is this.
right.
Right? A
Totally.
lot of people use it when they don't need to use it, which
Right,
means it's a training scar. It's not being used appropriately. If you're pulling somebody in to punch them, you're holding them still so that you can hit them. There are great reasons to have hikite, but there are also a lot of really awful examples of it being a training scar.
right. Yeah. I don't know. I've been out of the loop on that term. I just, it
No,
just
it's good. It's a good
floated
term.
to me. Yeah.
It's a good term.
Um, so we're teaching, I want you to explain how, okay, so when I was coming up in from Taekwondo, I went to Kempo. Okay,
Hmm.
Ed Parker's Kempo.
Hmm.
So, and it was taught almost identical way,
Uh-huh.
right? We'll do our punches up and down the floor, blocks up and down the floor, kicks up and down the floor, and then there's like one step sparring. Somebody will punch, and instead of doing inside block, elbow, back fist, reverse punch, we're doing 5 swords or parting
Yeah,
clouds
yeah.
or whatever the
Yep,
partner's
yep.
like. But it's the same, and then we'd spar.
Yeah.
It's like point sparring, spar,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it
yeah.
was almost the exact structure of as the Taekwondo school that I went to.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when I think of when I was studying Arnis, specifically modern Arnis, which was developed for school students and large groups of people,
Hmm.
it was do your strikes in the air, right?
Hmm.
Single stick, double stick. Now with a
Hmm.
partner, they strike and you do your one steps, meaning you do your counters against angle
Yeah.
one, angle two, angle three, but they're all one steps. The guys striking and stopping. And then you do a 4 or 5 or 6 pattern box patterns drill.
Yes.
Yeah. So almost identical. Like all these arts almost teach the same way, but they all kind of circled around each other in the 50s,
Yep.
during
Yep.
World War II and after.
Great
And the
point.
Americans learned it and brought it over here. So
Yeah.
that's why we can see some of that. But so for me, thinking of teaching traditional arts in the school, I think of like the goal is a black belt or equivalency, whatever that is in your school, right? Instructor level
That's
one.
what the average Western mind thinks
Right.
is like a major milestone.
A
Yeah.
milestone, right? And to
Yeah.
get there, they have colored belts, right? Or
Hmm.
you could have stripes on your thing, or you're done level one and there's 10 levels to black or to teacher level one, however you want to do it, but there's these segmented levels, right? So if you're looking at a teaching and if you're advising someone on creating a teaching plan and teaching method to get someone from, we're just going to say black belt, and get up through the different colors, even if you don't use them, there's some kind of time demarcation and content demarcation before you're introducing them to something else, right?
Hmm.
It could be the next kata, whatever.
Hmm.
There has to be some kind of let me rephrase that. Does there have to be
Hmm.
some kind of a structured um, scaffolding that they have, or stairwell that they have to follow, in which there are A, B, C, D to go around and up different routes to the top, but everybody's getting kind of if you have a big group class, you're doing 4 classes in a night, I think it's real hard to kind of focus in on each individual student and what they want out of the art,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do you approach that?
I don't think that's dramatically I mean, I don't think it shows up in every class. What I think it does, the whole like paying attention to what people are looking for. they have to at least 90% of the time be willing to just do the thing everybody's doing.
Right.
If there's 10% of the time where they're too timid to do the one thing, they don't want to be paired up with the guy that's hardcore, or they, whatever. Those are the cases where I'll do small things, but I don't want to overplay the idea that I'm teaching 5 different classes inside of one class. I'm not
Right.
really.
Right.
Um, but I have people, we all have different physical limitations, and
Of
so I
course.
have to take that into account. I'm very, very aware of that. So, um, but is that the primary question, or more about
I
like
guess
kind
it
of how
was,
to get
how
to
do
people
you,
to certifications?
yeah, yeah. And whatever that certification is, we're just talking
Mhm.
about them getting to a milestone, you
Yeah.
know. So let's just
So
call it black belt for because that's a common
yeah,
thing, right? Whatever
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
means within a
yeah,
club.
yeah,
And I'm just trying to work through how,
yeah,
using your teaching 101 method,
yeah.
I can see if I were going back, to the 80s, learning arnis or kempo or
Sure.
taekwondo, that I don't see how going 2 to 3 days a week for 45-minute classes or an
Right.
hour class with 50 minutes maybe, because they have to
Yeah.
change people and in for the next class,
Yeah.
that there's almost zero time, 2% of the time, for any kind of principles discussion. We're just
Hmm.
trying to hammer home
Sure.
these movements into muscle memory,
Sure. Sure.
you
Sure.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So I think there's a time and place, like read the damn book, right? That kind of
right.
thing. Like pay attention and come to lunch after class. Buy seafood lunch. Let's have
Yum,
ocha and
yum.
let's actually talk, and you'll get some of this reinforcement here. But part of it's just like being consistent in language.
Yeah,
Like when I say this in a specific way because it matters and it ties to the way your handouts are and the the student manual and those things. So yeah, lecturing in class I think is not great. I think I think people hate that. I try to remind people that they need to do their homework so that the solo component of every class time is as small as possible,
right.
so that we can get right to partner training. And then from a certification perspective, this was an epiphany for me at one point, one of the light bulbs. When you're building a curriculum and you're talking about backwards planning a curriculum, going from goals to measurements to training plans to lesson plans, measurements are roughly equivalent to gradings. Gradings are an add-on. The
Right.
measuring things the goal is to determine if there's progress being made and where's the quality right now.
Hmm.
Like what's the quality and where's the progress? Whether you tie that to gradings or not, that's entirely up to you as a teacher, negotiating that with your students. But I think now being more concerned about making sure people are developing skills, not just memory, this kata so you can earn this next belt. For me, it's important to switch as many of the subjective measures on the test to objective measures, meaning you got to block a full speed punch with this technique at this range 80% of the time in this drill. You got to do it this way in this drill, this way in this drill. And that way I can develop some more objective measures that actually relate to the specific skill sets. And I I say that it's hard. It's really hard. But yeah, I do think it's important for skill development reasons. In judo, it's a little easier, at least the way I understand it. You go compete. You go to that nationals thing. You compete. If you win your thing, you get your next belt or something. There are schools that work that way, right?
Right.
So there are some competitive ways of doing that, but we don't have those competitions necessarily to be able to drive that from. So for me, it's these drills in these ways with these measures in this amount of time with this intensity. If you're doing the things and making the real effects, and I might be the partner, so I can feel it and be sure, then I'll sign off on it. Right. And so you were talking earlier about how this common methodology is just like we did these things, then we did the free sparring. That was my experience as well. And what
Yeah.
I was missing is that most important middle. It was the bridge between fixed and full random. It was the
Right.
missing
Right.
the
Right.
semi-random, the
Right.
semi-random step that jumps you
Right.
from the beginning to the end. And you have solved this in Eskrima, to my perspective, because you built the drills that have the limited set of attacks, limited set of responses, building up to larger and larger sets. So
Right.
Hick's law says I just need to respond to one thing right now, and then two, and then four, and then I need to deal with failure. And then once I'm done dealing with failure, light failure, like I still have the initiative, and then bad failure, I don't have the initiative, right? So how do I
Right.
recover from all those, right? The old saying from the 36 strategies, right? Find victory in defeat. How do you get yourself out of bad scenarios? The oh shit
Right.
techniques, or the real weird random stuff that you pull out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that middle piece is missing almost everywhere. And those
Yeah.
are the drills that teachers need to heavily, heavily focus on to bridge the gap between one-step sparring and kickboxing that has nothing to do with the tradition.
When I was 15, we had to talk about something in school, in class, and we had to talk about something like we had to describe a problem with something. So people were like, oh, I built a model plane, and the problem was the super glue or the modeling glue, which melts the plastic to stick,
Yes, yes,
would get on your thumb. You can't get, and all
sure.
this. Da, da, da. So my problem that I said was, I have a problem in martial arts class. I was 15. I already saw the big problem.
Yeah.
And I said, we learning these katas, and then we do some of the movements in one step sparring,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And then we spar, and not a single movement is there from the
exactly.
katas.
Exactly.
I mean, the kick is there. There are not a lot of kicks in the kata, but we had all kinds of kicks we did on the
But now
floor.
I'm doing roundhouse kicks and we don't have a
Right.
single one of those in the kata or
Yeah,
whatever.
we
Yeah.
did lots of kicks
Yeah.
on the floor that aren't in the katas, right?
Right, right.
And then we're doing straight punch, reverse punch, and that's it. And we're not allowed to hit to the face or kick to the legs or sweep or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, so why can't we use this block and this block, and this
Right.
block in our
Yeah.
free sparring? And if
Right.
we can't because it's too fast, why the heck are we doing that in
Right.
one step sparring? Because the guy punches and leaves his hand there, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and
Yeah.
like Hubad, 4 moves to 1.
Right.
And there's a lot of guys who said, "Oh, Bruce Lee says that's swimming on dry land," and da 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 da. And here's how we do it. And then they'll do a Hubad, or they'll do it, a Kali counter, and the guy strikes one, and he'll do 50 moves, but the guy's still standing
Right.
there holding his
Right.
one.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
difference between
There's
them.
there's different problems with different drills. Every
Right.
drill is good at one or two things and bad at
Right.
absolutely everything else.
But there
Yeah.
was no bridge between the
Right.
kata slash
Yeah.
one step and the
Exactly.
sparring, which to me was the application. That's when I'm
Yeah.
fighting some guy in the street, that's what I'm
Right.
thinking it's going to be.
Right.
Right. But
Yeah.
no connection. And then I
Yeah.
thought, how come I wrestled in school
Yeah.
and I boxed as a teenager? And I
Yeah.
thought, how come in wrestling, we're just training wrestling moves? I
Yeah.
got to sit here with the other guy and grab their arm and get the single arm, the
Yeah.
arm drag. I have to
Yeah.
earn that.
Yeah.
Right? And in
Yeah.
boxing, there's 5 punches: jab, cross hook, uppercut, overhand.
Yeah.
And it's like bob and weave and parry and a catch. And it's like, boy, they're hitting each other hard right away. And you're practicing it right away. And there's no
Yeah.
cut.
Yeah.
So
It's a
it's like
great
those,
paradigm to look into. Yeah.
and fencing, right? So
Yeah.
fencing, wrestling, boxing, the combat sports,
Hmm.
where their training was geared toward the application they wanted, that sport
Yep.
application, but
Yep.
application nonetheless.
Yep.
And in our traditional martial arts, the training method was not geared towards success in the application of the art for
Right.
what they
Right.
say it was for.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the sparring was for the sport, but
Hmm.
the self-defense and the one steps were for self-defense,
Right.
and
Maybe.
boy,
Yeah.
big disconnect.
Exactly.
Like
Big
what
disconnect. So let me flip the script on you for a
yeah,
second, Sifu. Let me ask you,
no, okay.
how did you come to the point where you built the nucleus drill? What
Yeah,
were
yeah.
your thoughts about it? And can you explain it for people that haven't experienced it yet?
Well, for $29.95, they can download my course. The idea I had was that, again, wrestling, boxing, and fencing were basically for me they were a martial art, a martial sport, but it's a martial art
Mhm.
that the training method was geared toward being successful in the outcome they wanted. And
Yeah.
the outcome
It
was
matched.
winning the match, the
Right.
wrestling match, the boxing match, the fencing match. And in traditional martial arts that I had learned, and then I Wing Chun and Kempo, like tons of them, like we all have.
Mhm.
The outcome, the training was not matched to the outcome.
Right.
And then you had to dig up the secret techniques in the kata to find out the real movements and the pressure point strikes or the secret trapping drills. You know, one man's secret, is another man's
Mhm.
common knowledge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then in Wing Chun, they have all this trapping, but they don't have the long range kicking. But the secret of the thing is the kick,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in
Yeah.
Jiu-Jitsu, it's the strike before the lock. And for the guys who are just doing striking, it's the lock, which is the block.
Right.
It's like
Exactly.
everybody's trying to fill this in.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, if we're going to do a Eskrima, the first thing I did was, like you said, I had to break down what is Filipino martial art, what is Eskrima, meaning the weapon-based part of it.
Yeah.
And I looked at all the teachers. I mean, for years, I put all
Mhm.
their maybe 30
Mhm.
teachers, most of which have passed away now, and
Yeah.
outlined all of their techniques on poster boards.
Mhm.
And then I had to figure out which range, there has to be a range that a technique works in. Not every technique works in every range, you know? And then from there, you say, okay, so there's footwork for a given range, and there's techniques for a given range. And if the same technique can work in more than one range, which many can, they
Mhm.
have to have a different footwork because you need to be in a different position relative to your
Mhm.
opponent, right?
Mhm.
So you're not in range for their other hand or for them to grab you or et cetera, et cetera. So from that outline,
Mhm.
how do you now train it? See, I
Yeah.
took the top
Yeah.
level and went down just like you were talking about. How do you
Totally.
train it? And I thought of a spiral,
Mhm. Yep.
right? The nucleus is the middle and it
Mhm.
spirals out, it gets bigger. So just
Mhm.
like you were saying. And in the spiral is I have to be able to block and counter the most basic strikes that someone would strike at you,
Mhm.
which is basically an X and a thrust, okay?
Right.
Or a V with a line across the middle and a
Yeah.
thrust.
You were
Most
setting the
people.
context for the violence.
Right, the context for the
Yeah.
violence. And we'd say we'd limit the drill to, and I broke down the system that all of the Arnis Eskrima Kali techniques, let's say that in all of the arts put together, there's exactly 100 techniques just for an easy number.
Mhm.
Many styles use this set of 20, another use 6 here, 15 there, and 10 at the end.
Mhm.
If you were somehow
Mhm.
plotting them on a graph.
Yeah.
Some use 80 techniques, some use 7 techniques, um, but they fall into 4 modes of engaging an opponent, which means
Mhm.
4 reference points for applying them.
Mhm.
So mode 1, 2, 3, 4. And once you understand that, then it's easy to grow the nucleus drill because you start with a limited number of strikes being attacked that you have to defend against, and you say only use mode 1 counters and strikes against those 5 strikes.
Right.
Then when you go to 7 strikes, then we're hitting 9, and then we go to all 12. You're in
Yes.
order, now you're out of order. So now
Right.
you have a free flow and a mastery of the mode 1 counters with 5 strikes, 9 strikes, 12 strikes in order, and now
Right.
out of orders. And now the feeder, the person that feeding you the strikes, is allowed to move and not stand still. Right.
So
So
this goes from the most isolated artificial
super
with
artificial and isolated.
fewer options,
Right.
so more like fixed, more like
Right.
one-step sparring, to opening the randomness up gradually and
Right.
purposely
Right.
uh,
One
to
step
open.
sparring with 5 strikes to start that you have to counter and hit and counter on, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then we
Yes.
do the same thing with all mode 2s, mode 3s, and then mode 4, right?
Right.
So now that little drill is like stacking on itself, like Lego blocks four
Yes.
times, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then the person attacking you for the next level gets to deflect your counter and strike again in 1 to 5 in order and deflect your next counter on angle 2. And then you defend angle 2. He deflects, gives you angle 3. So now you're all goofy because your position is no longer where it was. So you're
Exactly.
starting from an uncomfortable, and you don't know how he's going to deflect or move your attack.
Right.
Sometimes you could deflect it to your right, to your left, down,
Yep.
up, and
Yep.
you've got to recover and
Yeah.
stay within your mode. because we
Yeah.
want you to master the mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what he doesn't do is just randomly throw a roundhouse kick to your head, right?
No, he
Because like
can't. Right.
we're trying to work
Right.
through Hick's
The
law.
feeder is your trainer. He's not your opponent or your sparring
Super
partner. He's
important.
your
Yeah.
trainer. And
Yeah.
he needs to speed up as you're able. And
Yeah.
then he can deflect and go and give you a feint. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have to respond to that with the modes one,
Yeah.
two, three,
Yeah.
four.
So
And then
progressively more and more difficult, more and more
so
advanced
the
because you're
spiral
adding.
keeps going out,
Yeah.
right? And so far it's all feeder defender, right?
Hmm.
And then feeder defender disarm the fifth strike, disarm the ninth strike. And then the disarms, there are five modes of disarm. And I say only use the third mode and
Right.
whatever one comes in. And you
Yeah. Yeah.
find out quickly, sometimes you can't use the third one on that because it doesn't work. But
Right.
that's a lesson that you will never forget.
Right.
When that backhand comes in here, I can't do the mode 3 disarm because the mechanics of getting from here to here just
Right.
don't happen in a safe,
In
efficient,
a
and
safe
effective
enough way.
way,
Nice.
right? It has to
Yeah.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
efficient, which is as
Yeah.
fast as it can be in as few
Yeah.
movements as possible. And
Yeah.
it has to be
Yeah.
effective, meaning you have to be able to earn it and not have him
Yeah.
let go of the stick. And it has to be
Yeah.
safe for you to do, where he can't counter you, grapple you, or stab you with the other hand while you're
Exactly.
doing it, right?
Exactly.
So the
No,
drill
thank.
spirals out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic because the way we define advanced is you're doing more and more at the same
More
time,
stuff.
right? You're dealing
Yeah.
with more and more at the same time. You're able to do more and more methods of control all at
Right.
once. For people that pick up my book, the discussion about the stuff that Sifu Mark Wiley just
Yeah.
discussed is all around page 70, 71 for about the next 5 or 10 pages, where I talk about the difference between fixed and randomized drilling progressively increasing, and then also talking about going from kind of best case scenario to worst case scenario, dealing with counters and interruptions and stuff of that nature. Although I think there's things that are definitely not in the book, but it should give you the rough idea if you take a look there. So
Tell us the meaning. You gave me a really nice plaque that your mom had made
okay,
uh, with
sure,
characters for Shuhari on
sure,
that.
yeah,
What does
yeah,
that mean, and how can that help teachers and practitioners?
yeah. Great question. So shuhari is a Japanese saying that's often also, at least in modern times, applied to martial arts, and it talks about the stages of learning. Shu is the word for protect, like in Kung Fu, you might use it for blocking, to describe blocking. Ha means to smash, and Ri means to separate, or in our five ancestor Kung Fu, it's to
Uh-huh.
split the center open, right? To separate. So they're meant to represent stages of learning, or often discussed in that way. Shu means to kind of just do what you're told, protect the tradition and the base way of doing things. Ha means to start hitting the edges of kind of like when you're a child and you're trying to learn your boundaries. You're banging on your
Always
boundaries,
testing.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Always
yeah.
testing, always testing. That's what the ha stage means, to smash. It's like I'm pushing against all the rules, right? So you're starting to learn what they are, why they exist, when it makes sense to violate them, those things. And then re means to be basically kind of be born as your own person, just to separate yourself from the constraints of the tradition. And here's the way I like to reframe this, because there's so much us versus them, white versus black, pendulous kind of thinking where we always overcorrect. I'm
Yeah.
usually really, at least at this stage of my life, trying to find the middle that works for me. I like to reframe tradition as the intention is to be a launching point, not a constraint. So
Yes.
now that doesn't mean you change the art and lie about what the art is now and say, well, we always had that. Well, there was always
Yeah.
Naihanchi was always a ground fighting form.
Tagumi.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Just like be honest about everything, but also like don't be fully constrained by things when it doesn't make sense. So I really am trying to embrace the idea of thinking of the tradition was meant to be a launching point. It was not meant to stop you from growing up and being an adult. And
Yes.
so to me, that's what the separation means. It means kind of separation from the seeing the system as a constraint, but seeing it for all the value it gave you
Right.
to grow you up in that way. So
So be inspired by the tradition, not caged by it.
that's the thing. I think that's the challenge that a lot of us who are misunderstanding tradition
Yeah.
and other cultures have ran into. Yeah.
One of my favorite classical composers is Gustav Mahler, who you
Yeah.
quoted in the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mahler's Fifth Symphony is really nice for all you non-buffs who need to listen to something. Check out the Fifth,
Nice.
Mahler's
Nice.
Fifth. So the quote is, "Tradition is not the worship of ashes, but their transmission of fire." Talk about that a little bit and how that applies to teachers, for
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
teachers, because
No,
since that's
that's,
what we're talking about.
yeah. I think this may, well, we'll see if I can add anything new to this. I mean, first off, I would like to say Hanshi Patrick McCarthy made many of us aware of that quote. It's a great
Oh,
quote. So
okay.
many of us have stolen that from him. Um, but I, I really think for me, it harkens back to that earlier part of the conversation where I said the, the figuring out what matters to carry forward, the principles, the specific movements, some of the tricks, the kata, carrying those forward, but teaching them however you need to teach them to
Yeah.
get the point across. So, worshiping the ashes to me would be like just teaching the way you used to teach, even if that just meant you drive away almost every last student because you're a hardcore badass and this is the way we always did it, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're complaining you need more horse stance. I mean, that's the answer to every question you're going to have, buddy, right? Like that's not the way to reach a modern audience, in my opinion, or
Yeah.
the next generation of students, I should say, to be more accurate. So to me, that's what that means, Sifu, is just, you know, figure out how to make sure that flame doesn't go out. And sometimes you're going to have to make concessions that you're like, man, these people just don't train as hard as I did. Or, man, they just, I'm a little frustrated with this version versus the version I came up with, but seems to be the only way I can get this information across to people. I think there's sometimes concessions you make, and it is what it is. I wish 100% of my students were here physically 5 nights a week for 2 hours. It's a far cry from that,
Yeah.
so I try to make sure that they understand that we need to be trained. Kimo Sensei always said, train hard, train often. I've added a third one, train smart.
Yeah.
Train hard, train smart, train often. Train smart, meaning like when you're not in school, get your training in. So we're not doing the solo stuff in class. I don't want to do any solo stuff in class with you guys. Like it just is. When we're
Yeah.
together, I don't want to be a bunch of people together doing separate stuff.
Right.
So in a world where we're very disconnected, there are very few of us interested in these rare traditions, and we're trying to figure out ways to make it work. I think we just have to be creative about it. Distance learning, I went in kicking and screaming. I would say
You
it's
love it
it's
now.
it's horrible, but it's great, right?
Yeah.
It's you can't do any real skill development or partner work, but you can get people very prepared for partner work,
Right.
as if you're creative. So yeah, it's a concession. It's kind of like the definition of a compromise, right?
Right. Right.
Nobody's happy.
Yeah.
Nobody gets exactly what they want. No, I do the online stuff. I do the teaching books and everything just to help everybody so that when we do get together, we absolutely maximize our opportunity. And that's
Yeah.
that's one of the main goals.
Hmm. I was going to ask something and I forgot because I was listening to what you were saying. So now I'm just going to ask you this one here.
All right.
So you divide curriculum into four categories: knowledge, attributes, body coordination, and skills.
So I divide a catalog into those.
Okay, a
Curriculum
catalog.
is different. So I'll just
Okay.
clarify. I think there are two main structures that are important. One is the catalog, which is kind of
Mhm.
the word I put to it. There may be other words. I did a lot of research. I didn't come up with anything that I liked better than the word catalog. So I'm sticking with that for today. Um, Catalog is describing what the art is, irrespective of the day-to-day training approach. It is what is the totality of the art in terms of its
The components of it, right?
what are the components of it,
Right.
right? What is all the mental stuff we can chat about on a podcast over lunch, drinking a beer, whiskey for me. So it's the knowledge elements or all the theory. It's the history, the morality, the mindset, the cultural context. It's the strategy, the underlying tactics, the teaching and training theories. That stuff all goes under knowledge elements. It's all the stuff you can write in a book.
Yeah.
Attribute development is if they didn't come to you as a young, strong, fit warrior, what are you going to do about it? What are the physical and mental attributes that you're going to try and
Right.
develop in them that are either generalized or hyper specific, and how, and then maybe some ideas on how to train them. And then body coordination. This is really tough. This is where it's really hard to get traditionalists over a hump. Body coordination barely needs to exist, but we do it a lot of times for safety reasons. It's all your solo practice to get you moving exactly in the aesthetic of the style. It's getting your left arm and your right arm working together. It's getting your arms and your lower body working together well. It's over time developing your power, and it's also developing your flow. So it's basically getting your mind and your body wired together in the way the art wants it to be,
Right. Right.
isolated from a partner.
Right.
So these are your kata, these are your combos, these are your singular movements, these are your line drills walking up and down the floor. It's everything that looks like a part of a maneuver, but not really applied against a person. So there's no real skill development. And this is what we can do: knowledge elements, attribute training, and body coordination on an online class. But without a partner, you can't do real skill development, in my
Mm.
mind, because that's where you actually practice the maneuvers. So
Right.
skill development, as I we talked a little bit about this just briefly, but basically it's saying what are the skills and maneuvers of the art. It's what are the tricks and tactics and approaches that you use to implement the tactics. So the tactics tell you kind of what to do, and the maneuvers tell you some examples.
Right.
So the maneuvers, the techniques, the applications, those words are all actually very pregnant with meaning for all different people. And so I've been settling on maneuvers recently because they seem to be a little more easily understood. We talked about tricks earlier. It's how do you take the tactics of the art and demonstrate them on a person to
Right.
achieve a goal? So in a fight, you've got the context. What are you wearing? What's the lighting? What's the footing? How did he attack you? What was your element of awareness or not? Exactly how did he attack you? And then how do you defend yourself and counter control? That's the entirety of what you need a skill to be able to manage in terms of violence. And all those things are a factor. So as you train, there are people out there, they get in a car, they put their seatbelts on and they fight from there, right? You get in somebody comes up behind one teacher I know, when class is going, he slips a plastic knife in one person's back pocket, and then sometime during the class you're supposed to go shank somebody in class just out of the blue, right? Just to keep everybody like hyper aware, to give everybody PTSD, but also to
Right.
make them ready. Um, but anyhow, those are the broad categories. There are many sub-elements of each of those elements of the catalog, but there's what to know and what drives everything else. There's how do you get a human body ready to be an avatar of the style, right? Because the style exists in theory until you put it in your body properly.
Right.
And then body coordination, how do you move your body the way the style wants you to? The coordination, the power, the flow. And then lastly, how do you use all that other stuff in a real context
Hmm.
or something approaching a real context over time,
And real
right?
and good teachers need to get all of this across to their students through the course of their training.
Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
helpful for students, as I mentioned in the first book, Principle Driven Skill Development. I like students to be aware. They don't have to be experts in the teaching method,
Right.
but people should be, this is really common. How many times have you seen people do drills and they just can't articulate what the drill is for?
Right.
Like, it's a flow drill.
So what? What does
What
that
does
mean?
that mean?
Right.
What are you getting at? Nowadays, I would be more inclined to say, okay, tell me one or two things this drill is doing good for you, and give me like 5 or 10 examples of the things that it's not accurate on or it's not
Right.
helpful with. Because I think that's really true of every drill. I think every drill is valuable in a vector, in a direction, and it just can't be good in every direction because that would be a real fight.
You're right. Right.
And most of us have to go to work tomorrow, so
Work or school.
yeah,
Oh
exactly.
man.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, all great stuff.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk. And yeah, if you want to follow up on more,
We're
I
going to have
definitely
to
be happy
because
to.
I still got two and a quarter pages left.
All
So
right, all
we're going to
right.
have to double up on this one to get
Well,
clear.
yeah. Well, again, I
Um,
really appreciate the opportunity. This book,
yeah,
like all these things, this all just started for my students, principle driven skill development. I was just going to do this for my students. It was going to be our secret little kung fu manual. And then, I had a student really give me a lot of crap about that. So I changed my mind and agreed to just publish it. And, these are our perspectives. There are a lot of ways. There are a million mental models out there. You can call them different things, whatever. But what's really important is that they be simple, understandable, progressive, and that if you're going to use it, you be consistent.
right.
So those are, like there's no real secrets except training. There's no real secrets except from a teacher's perspective, except be clear, be progressive, be consistent, those
Hmm.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it beats the old books that we grew up on when there was a martial artist writing about teaching or a Zen master, and they'd say, your job as the teacher is to nurture the student to figure out and solve their own problems, to be good human beings, and da da da. But nothing about the way to teach the method that you're
Sure.
imparting on them
Sure.
to make that happen for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the what, but
Yeah.
not the how, or without
Yeah.
the way. Yeah,
Yeah. And to that point, my book, um, I hope you felt this, and I hope the readers will feel this. This is not a specific teaching methodology.
right,
This is a lot of concerns that you should have and think through as a teacher.
right.
Some suggestions, some mental models that work for me, but I am not saying this is the right way to teach. There are a million methods. Um, so yeah, please don't look at this book as a I'm going to read this and I'm going to teach according to this method. There are some pieces in here you might grab and use straight away, but most of it is, hey, think about this. If you're going to head off problems before you encounter them, read this. Think about these things. Set yourself up for success by at least considering these problems. Learn from my mistakes. Don't learn the hard
Right,
way,
right.
right? Consider these things and have a solution. Whatever there's there's not you said just a moment ago, you know, teach people to become better humans. I think that is a super worthwhile goal. I think it's fantastic. I think we should all be trying to do these two things at the same time if we're serious about teaching. I think we should be very serious about passing on a tradition and very serious about helping people.
Yeah,
And so if you put one above the other or however you do it, that's up to you. That's your school. All I suggest strongly is be super clear with everybody what you're doing. We're doing something that's very holistic. It's good for your exercise. It's a great social activity. It's really not that valuable for self-defense. Or I train MMA fighters. And if you're here for exercise, get out, right? Like just whatever you're doing, just be super clear. Don't lie about it. Don't cover it up. Don't chase the money. Like if you care about a tradition, like be clear about what the tradition is and how you plan to teach it and how far you're going to deviate from some mythological average student that you have in your mind.
yeah. Very good advice. Thank you
Cool.
so much, Sensei.
Thank you so much.
Sifu.
Appreciate
You're a
you,
man of
Sensei.
many arts
Sifu.
and much knowledge and wisdom, and it's very much appreciated. I recommend that any martial artist who is teaching privately or small groups, not commercially. If you're teaching commercially, you have different goals as a teacher, meaning to keep the school filled and as many people moving through. But if you're teaching in a commercial way, that you're really looking to develop in your students the tradition of your art, the skills of your art, the methods of your art, that Russ's book, Teaching 101, is the way to go. Um, Read it for insight, read it for concepts, read it for its principles, its ideas, and it will spark things. Nothing in the book says you've got to teach this stance with this form and this technique.
Right.
It's all about here's a structure that you can lay your own art onto. Here are some methods to help train the students to get these skills. You don't have to, like the late Stuart Olson wrote a book called Steal My Art during his time training with T.T. Leong, Tai Chi master. and TT Leung would say, push hands with me and steal my art, get it from me, the essence, because he didn't have another way to teach you how to do it.
Right.
And nobody gets that much one-on-one time to steal somebody's art like that. You just don't have enough time to touch hands with your teacher all the time to get all the potential skills, because it's all concept, it's theory, it's principle, it's tactics, and it's strategies, and you just can't infer them all, right? You have to know what they are. You have to know how to use your body power, your waist, the mechanics. It all has to get into your body's muscle memory, and that stuff needs to be there for the real learning to take hold. And the teacher has to have a platform for that. And the 101 book has that platform. It has a structure for you to look at that you can build your own platform on top of, or use it as a launching pad to start. And I think all
Yeah.
traditional martial artists should.
Thank you so much, Sifu. I hope you see your influence in there because it's strong. The book's available in Kindle and in paperback on Amazon.com. It's principle-driven skill development, teaching 101. And if you read it um, and want help in putting this into your style, system, school, organization, you can contact me. I can consult with you to do so. Um, and again, the concept here is this is kind of a hoplological approach that this should work for sporting systems. This works for all kinds of systems that you may want to use, including battlefield self-defense kind of arts. You can use the structures here
Right.
to catalog systems and then to develop curriculum. So
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Awesome.
awesome. Thank you so
Good to see
much.
you. Thank
Great to
you.
see you. Have a good